A Retro Ramble with.
This week's special guest is well known for one main thing that happened in the 90s on Gamesmaster, the UK TV show. But his life story has so many more facets than just this. He has worked and travelled with the carnival, living on a bus. He has been a lifeguard in Australia, a magazine editor in the UK, and co-hosted two of the biggest 90s gaming TV shows around at that time. He has a fascinating view on life, music and films, and obviously gaming. It gives me great pleasure to chat to Dave Perry, the game's animal.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good indeed.
It seems a bit surreal interviewing somebody that I watched so far back in the day, and you thought, oh, he must know everything about games, being in that pulpit when he was commenting on the players.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is the nice thing that happens is that as time goes by, people who you idolized when you were younger. I mean, I'm not saying you idolized me, but I mean people I know that I idolized. You're able to talk to them once the moment's gone a little bit. As time goes on, people become more accessible, don't they? When they're in the moment, it's very hard to get to people. But later on, when people calm down a bit and become a little bit more cool about their moment in the sun, people are a lot more accessible.
Did you ever think for 1 minute back then that 25, 30 years later, people would still be talking about the things that happened on those programs?
You know what? At the time, I did a YouTube just recently talking about setting up the first Gamesmaster and my experiences in doing that. And at the time, we had a sense we were doing something special because we were the first people to do it. So you always know when you're ploughing a field for the first time, you always know it's something a bit special. But that people would still be watching it 25 years on and would still revere it 25 years on. And sadly, happily for us, sadly for the gamers of today, unfortunately, that it should still be the greatest TV show 25 years on video games. When we did it back then, when we put that show together back then, we expected everyone to follow. We thought we were breaking through. But this would just be the start of it. And it should have been. I mean, video gaming back then was so fringe. It was so frowned upon. I liken it to punk music. I was lucky enough to have been around when punk happened. And the reason punk was so successful as a youth movement was that the adults were frightened of it. They didn't understand it. And video gaming was the same when it broke through. The adults didn't understand it and they were frightened of it because their kids were suddenly addicted to something in their bedrooms that they didn't understand, that hadn't been part of their generation. And I thought, as it went on in time, and now it's a multi-billion-pound industry, it's as big as the movies, it's as big as music, then surely media would follow, as in mainstream media. But it hasn't. We've been cast aside in favor of cookery shows, and things like that. And people blame it on the internet. Yes, the internet is a problem, but there still should be mainstream TV shows because nothing beats seeing something on TV. You can watch a million shows on YouTube. It never will be held in the same regard as a television show. Never will.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like, and especially back in the day as well, because there wasn't access to the internet. The way you got news was either via the television or via magazines. That was exactly how it worked.
Well, the funny thing is, the gaming generations now obviously don't understand that because they've never had to experience that. But I myself, from time to time, I'm shocked when I'm reminded of it because you forget, you get used to the world being as it is now, and I forget and I think back to it sometimes, and it was just the music scene, the game scene, everything. It was all based around the TV shows and magazines and so forth, and you forget that was the only way to get the information. You had no other way of getting the information. I mean, everything is so quick and disposable now. And the value has gone out of it, and I think that's why shows like 25, 30 years ago are valued so highly, is because we appreciated what they did for us at the time.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's spot on what you say. Everything is so readily available. There's no anticipation anymore. It's just there. It's even the same with the games. If you want a game, you go online, you download it, you've got it. In our day, you had to wait for it to come out. You'd look at the reviews, then you'd wait for it to be released, it to get delayed, and then all that.
Yeah, but the buzz was there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The buzz was there, and there was proper journalism. Because it was when you put something in writing, there's a lot more legal implications, so it has to be done properly, and everything has to be edited properly and looked through properly, and then it costs you £30,000, £40,000 to print the magazine and put it out there. There's a huge investment in getting that information out to the readers, to the viewers. So it's very important that you get it right. Whereas now, I mean, I could sit here now and type a review, and 200 people could read it by tomorrow. And it's just and it would take absolutely minimal effort for me to write it, and I could put 1,000 indiscrepancies in that review, and people wouldn't even care, because the next day someone will write another one. It's just, everything is so disposable. It's a shame. It's like somebody taking you out for McDonald's or cooking you a home cooked meal. I mean, you'll feel so much more about that person who went to that effort and cooked you a home cooked meal. You'll remember that evening way more than that person took you from McDonald's. It means nothing. It's too easy. It's too easy.
Yeah, definitely. It's that disposable generation, as they call it, where everything's disposable.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, and it's catching on, because it's a generation now that is disposing of everything too easily. We're giving everything away, and getting offended by everything. I'm saying we, not me, because I'm old now, so I'm stuck in my ways. I'm a child of the 80s and the 90s. But I mean, the generations that are coming through now need to be very careful about what they're getting angry and offended by and giving away, because once they realise their mistakes, it'll be very hard to take it back again. Very hard.
Do you find yourself, and I know I do, turning into your parents when you always just think, why are they moaning about that? But now we've turned into them.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, definitely there's this, occasionally you say something or do something and you think, oh my God, when I was a kid, that would have so annoyed me. I mean, I have a daughter, and I do it with music, particularly film sometimes. I try to get them to listen to the old albums or watch these films I know are great films that have stood the test of time, but they want to watch the Marvel stuff and that. It's okay, good, it's entertaining, but those are not great films. And the one for me was a couple of years ago when Endgame came out, the Avengers movie. It was such a terrible film. Terrible. One of the worst films I've ever seen. And people could not understand me saying that. And younger people were getting so irate. This film was definitive for our generation. This was a major film happening for our generation. Everything. It's fucking awful. They invented... As soon as anybody brings a time machine into the first half an hour of a movie, that is the second part of a movie, so they're basically going to redo everything they did in the first film. They've killed it. They've killed the whole thing, but they can't see that. I mean, the faults in that film and the whole time travel, just terrible. And I try and tell them, and get them to watch older films, but they won't. And the music thing, and I feel music particularly, because I love music, and I listen to music all day when I'm working, and I feel sorry for kids, because music was such a big part of my life, and going back to what we said, reading the reviews, reading about the bands. You never really got to see the bands anywhere unless they were on the TV shows, waiting for the albums to come out, the singles to come out, going and buying them, rushing home with them, putting on your record player, listening to the whole thing. There was almost like an order to it all. It was almost like a religious ceremony supporting bands, and you had these great music shows like The Word and The Tube and Top of the Pops and things like that. And these things, we just worked our weeks around seeing those things. And the next day you'd get into school or get into work and you'd be like, did you see so-and-so on that? And it was amazing. Whereas now, I mean, the charts, how do they even do the charts anymore? Nobody actually buys anything anymore. There's no one physically owns an album anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's just nonsense. Bands just like, I mean, when I see people like Ed Sheeran or someone, and they release an album and like 7 of the 8 tracks on that album go instantly into the top 10, and it's like, And they're going, oh, that's better than the Beatles ever did. No, it's not, because they're just the album tracks. People just downloading the album tracks.
Yeah.
They're not particularly choosing those records against everything else that's on offer. They just have downloaded the album. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And I feel sorry for them, because it's just so worthless, you know. And like us, I think for kids, music is like a rites of passage. It's important to them, but they're being spoon fed such watered down tripe by the studios now. It's not even, you know, the days of these young bands hardening themselves, driving around in transit vans and trying to build an audience seems long gone now. It's just you know, grey suited middle-aged men just producing these albums for people, and I don't know. I just just drives me nuts.
It's all about the money.
Where
now.
Are the stars?
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
Danger. Music used to be dangerous. People were frightened, you know, of Elvis. People were frightened of Elvis. People were frightened of the Sex Pistols. People, you know, didn't like, you know, the wall of noise Oasis brought to it. You know, the Britpop and punk, and then you had the New Romantics, and you know, it was scary and it was shaping society. Where's that gone now? No one's frightened of musicians now. No one's scary.
No, well, nobody will remember this generation, I don't think, in years to come. You touched on it yourself. You would buy a CD or an album, and you would play it, and you would play it, and you would play it until it were literally burnt out. Now, you can download 1,000 tracks. You don't listen to half of them, so you don't listen to some of the better tracks, because it wasn't always the mainstream ones that were best tracks. It was the other ones on the album.
And it's too easy. It's too easy before you've even given that album proper room to breathe. You know, 2 or 3 other albums have come down, or it's been remixed and rehashed, and those versions are out, and you never get to see it. And also the art, you know, it was artistic. You know, the artists, they thought about their image, they thought about where their music was going, and the photography and the artwork on that album that represented where the music was going, and all the way home on the bus or whatever, you were looking at the album sleeve and you were buying into that moment, and they controlled this world that their music worked within and breathed within, and you invested into it emotionally, and it was wonderful. But pressing download and then putting your earbuds in, there's nothing involved. You know, it's getting information without earning it, and as a result, you don't respect it and you don't invest in it, and like you say, it will be forgotten.
Yeah, it's sad, because it's like you say, it's pre-manufactured, if you like, especially like with all the reality TV shows where like X Factor and stuff. They're all sort of determined. When they say that this person's never sung before, you find out afterwards that they've been singing for X amount of years and they've been in choirs.
They didn't make it, and then now they're coming. But the X Factor is wonderful for me, because that's such an oxymoron, if you like. In that, I remember when X Factor first came out. Before that, we had, was it Pop Stars or whatever? I can't remember what the show was before that. There was a music show before X Factor. And Simon, or whatever he's called, not Simon Callow, he was a different guy altogether. Simon who? Who was he called? Simon
Cowell. Simon Cowell.
Oh, it is Cowell.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So he was on that show, and then he broke off and did X Factor for himself, obviously to get more money. So I got that. And then I remember in the early shows, they said that the reason it was called X Factor was that they were trying to find bands and artists who had that little bit of something that no one else had, the X Factor, which is where the phrase X Factor came from, long before the TV show. And that is important. I believe in that completely. And then, like every other musical show that's on TV right now, it just became a singing contest.
Yeah.
And I sit here and I say to people I watch it with, or my daughter or her friends or whatever, you know, because they love the fact that these guys are, I'm like, there are ocean liners out there full of great singers. There are holiday camps all over Europe and resorts full of great singers. Being a great singer does not make you a star. and they've lost that. They're chasing the great singers, and everything is about been a Mariah Carey cover or a Beyonce cover. Oh my God, she's trying a Whitney song. So fucking what? Who cares? I mean, Ozzy Osbourne, Marilyn Manson, Shawn Ryder, Robbie Williams. None of these guys, I don't think, would have got through X Factor. They would not have got through them, but they all have the X Factor. They all have star quality. And it's so obvious because people that come off these shows very rarely become big stars. Very rarely. They fade away very quickly, and end up on the West End stage or something, if they're lucky. Singing backing to some other failed pop star. And it's like, because they don't have the X Factor, people are looking for the wrong thing. This whole singing contest thing, it's become too sanitized because it's easy to do that way. It's easy to do that way. I mean, Jedward, classic example, Jedward, love or hate them, massive amounts of star quality, very, very watchable. Are they particularly good at anything? It doesn't matter. They're watchable, and they're a classic example of having the X Factor without actually being very good. Rylan is another one. Rylan wasn't particularly a great singer, but something was intriguing about him, and he's gone on to have a big career now as a presenter. So, it's everything has just got too. It's been broken down to basically its bare minimum in content. It's just everything is mush. It's like that scene in is it Hangover 2. Where the Oriental lady's dad describes the dentist guy as being, I can't remember what it is, choy or something, which is basically it's just wet rice, and that's what it's like, I mean, there's no one really causing trouble. I see Harry Styles in a dress on Vogue magazine or something. You're kind of like, at least he's trying, but it's been done. It looks like such a fey effort to do what everyone else has done before. Come on.
Yeah, get a bit of personality.
Yeah, of course. Give us something to really look at.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. So, just going back, because I've done a bit of research before the interview. You've got so many facets to your past history that you could write books on each bit of it.
Yes.
The bit about living in a bus and travelling with a fare, I found fascinating. How was that? Because as a teenager, that was every teenager's dream, weren't it, in the 90s?
I don't know. I guess so. It's just something I fell into. I'd basically come back from Australia. I went to Australia with £175 in my pocket and a one-way ticket. I had no idea how I was getting home, because back then you could do that. You could buy a one-way ticket. Now I think you've got to buy a two-way ticket. They don't let you in if you can't get home. So I went to Australia and I had to work my way around Australia for a year. So in Australia, I think jobs. I was a cocktail barman. I was a aerobics instructor. I was a tour bus driver and a shoe salesman. And I did all these things while living in a tent and traveling around Australia. And when I came back, I then had to get a job pretty quickly. And my qualifications were all in design and photography and art. I'd been at the Bath Academy. And so I went and saw this chap who had a little design agency, and started working for him regularly. And he was quite an innovative guy and a real blue sky thinker. And he got an old bus, basically a bus, like we call them Devon General buses down here, because that was the bus service down here. But it's a single decker bus that carries people around to and from town. And he got an old one that was being chucked out. He bought it and he renovated it and had somebody who did the inside of boats come in and put in wardrobes and bedroom and things like that in there. And me and him, then we took that bus out and we traveled to the various conventions and with the fairgrounds and that. We traveled all over the country, and where the fair went, be it to some big fete or outdoor happening, or where it just went to a town or whatever. If we thought there was $1 in it for us, we went with them, and we got to know people, and they were happy with us parking with them on their side of things. And then he would go around and talk to all the guys that ran the rides and the shows and events and things, and he would bring the work back to me, and I would sit in the bus, and I had 2 computers set up with desktop publishing packages on them, running off a petrol generator, and I would sit there turning out business cards and signs and things for the guys at the fairground, and then I had obviously there's a lot of cash being handed around in those days, and it's quite a rough line of work, if you like, because when a fair comes to town, it can attract a certain kind of people. And so I had a big Rottweiler called Layla who lived with me, and she would sit with me and look after me while I did all the design work for the teenage board. So, and I had like a little bed in the bus at the front end of the bus. The chap who owned it had a nice bedroom at the back that he'd had all done out. I just had like a little child's bunk bed, and we just travelled all over the country in this bus, and we just worked, and that was when the computing thing became more and more of a thing for me, because up till then it had been gaming and a bit more casual and writing, but then through doing this and desktop publishing was just happening. That was when I got more and more interested in the home computing side of things, because that's another side that people don't realize is, up to about 87, 88, desktop publishing was not a thing. No one had seen it. When we were designing things for customers, when I was at college and then university, everything was done by hand. We lettered completely by hand, or we used a PMT machine, and we measured everything in points and pikers. There was no instantly seeing it on a screen. So when the first Mac SE started appearing at uni, it was clear that was the way to go.
Well, I wondered if that was because obviously at that, like you say, at that time, desktop publishing was in its infancy. Really, was it like you say, all dark rooms with photographs and developing, and with your design, like you say, on paper, and then see what it looked like?
Yeah, it was. Everything had to be done. I mean, if you think about it, if you were rendering something up for a customer to approve, or as we were as students for an exhibition or something, or for our teachers, say we had a piece of text, 100 words, 4 paragraphs or whatever, and it was in Times New Roman 12 point, we had to then sit and meticulously do every letter in that style and out, and it was a hell of a hand skill, so when desktop publishing came along, that was a huge sigh of relief, and it opened the world up for design, because it meant everybody could do it from that point on.
So that must have been a nightmare, having to draw each font size, if you like, and write it with like that.
It was, and then desktop publishing came along, and like I say, I made a point of learning that very early on, because I could see it was the future. And then that was how I ended up initially buying an Amiga 500, because I couldn't afford a Mac, but I was convinced by somebody that the Amiga was going to be the way forward, with Deluxe Paint and all that, and the various programs that were coming on it. And then that turned out to be pretty shit for desktop publishing, to be honest. But great for playing games. So then I just used it completely for playing games. And then the only way you could get games back in those days, and other than going to a store, and of course, bearing in mind there weren't many game selling stores because gaming wasn't that big, was to buy it over the phone. I couldn't buy it online, no internet. So you had to buy it over the phone, send your orders in, and these companies would send you magazines, and you would choose your games and order them and wait for your games to arrive. And when those magazines came in, quite often they were subscriber-based magazines with reviews and articles and features. And I would read those, and I knew I could do them better. So I applied to the magazines that I was getting, saying, basically I could do your job better, but more politely than that. And I got a gig. Now I ended up moving to London then, and getting into magazines.
Yeah, that's when you was with Special Reserve. That's
one
right. Of the companies, yeah.
That's right. They were the biggest European mail orders company at the time, and they produced 3 subscriber magazines. So I went up there for a deputy editor's job, and I was their publishing manager within a year.
You must be good at what you do then.
Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to be good at what I do. Yeah.
So I've seen a few pictures of the magazines that you produce, because I didn't realise they were actually full size. I thought they were like, like the A5 size magazines. Because I used to be in the Home Computer Club, and they used to send you an A5 magazine, but they were actually full size magazines, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were very, very basic. Because, like I say, desktop publishing was still in its infancy, and we were doing everything on the Macs. And I remember by the time I was getting ready to leave Special Reserve, we had just started to, the programs Quark Express, which is the main one we were using, and that just now got to a stage where you could import pictures into boxes and do lots. Because even at that stage, then I was still having to lay out text, write text, and then lay it out on the page, but leave the gaps that I needed to leave for the images. And then I would physically then fit the images in over the text, and then the whole thing would be sent off then to Repro House to be printed and everything. There was still a lot of hands-on stuff, but it was moving along quickly at that point.
Did you see all the reviews? Because one of the questions I was going to ask, you don't have to answer this. So from a Special Reserve perspective, there was reviews with scores in there, and from a business perspective, you're not going to review something and say this is rubbish, because I suppose they're wanting to sell that game. So did you pick what games you reviewed based on how good and bad they were?
Well, I think we picked largely what was going to be popular, because obviously we needed to tell people they were out there, and we knew the games that the buyers wanted to buy. But review-wise, I can't remember if we gave them scores or not in those magazines, because that's always a way around it, is not to give them a score, just to give an opinion.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful. But you find with magazine work in general, particularly in the 80s and 90s, in the games field, that's a constant battle.
Yeah.
A constant battle between giving a game a fair appraisal, i.e. actually telling people what it's like, warts and all, but also not pissing off the company who's just signed up for 6 months worth of advertising with you.
Yeah,
yeah,
which you totally get, because there's that business side, isn't it? You've got to balance it, if you like.
Of course there is. At the end of the day, the magazine pays your rent and puts food in your cupboard, but the magazine isn't going to be financially successful if the advertising stops coming in. The advertising manager isn't going to make any money if he doesn't get his percentage, and the bosses of the company aren't going to see their shares increase unless their magazine's profitability goes up. So it's a very delicate balance, because in order to get a good readership, get enough people reading your magazine, you've got to be honest, and you've got to call a potato a potato. You can't keep saying games are great and then the readers go out and buy them and they're rubbish, because then they'll stop reading your magazine. So you've got to have the readers, because you've got to have the sales figures. You've got to be able to say you've got 50,000, 60,000 readers a month, because then that enables the advertising manager to sell the adverts to people, because he can say 60,000 readers will see your advert, but then those advertising people aren't going to give it to you if you're going to slate their game. So it's the real, the editorial team generally get caught right in the middle of it all. They at one point they're trying to protect the integrity of the editorial and protect the brand of the magazine and their own reputations, but the other side, they're also acutely aware of the need for financial responsibilities. So it's always very, very difficult. It's a juggling.
Seems like juggling type.
Spinning plates. Always spinning plates.
From Special Reserve issue, you then saw you got contacted by Hewland, who made the game shows, Gamesmaster and Gamesworld, and you went into that side of things. When you first went in, was that a bit of an eye opener from the difference between the magazine world to what TV world was like? Oh,
hugely, because the magazine world's very insular, and of course the games industry was still very much lowly regarded at the time. We were still seen as nerds. It was still very embryonic. Nobody really knew what to make of it. But the TV world had been around for years and years and years and years, and people that work in TV are a completely different breed. They're a lot more. Without wanting to be too horrible, they're not as warm it's very much about the product. It's very much about the show. Quite often in TV, people will make you feel like you're the most important person in the room, but actually the most important person in the room is the show. Do you know what I mean? That you're just
the brand,
you're
if you like,
more that of the show. Yeah, they will do almost anything to make the show better. And TV was completely different. It was just so professional, and the people that work in it generally are so smart and so intelligent and just and a real step up from where I'd been before. You know, I'd managed to make myself a big fish in a small pond, and I went to TV, and I was a very small fish in a huge, huge pond full of giants. But it was brilliant, you know, and it was absolutely mind-blowing for me. It was where I wanted to be. You know, I wanted to meet famous people, and I wanted to see what it's like behind the scenes. And you know, it was just wonderful, wonderful times to be there, and to be involved in all of that. And I loved it.
I think that's what fascinates me. Obviously, at the time, I enjoyed the program and I enjoyed watching it. But now it's more about behind the scenes, what happened, how did it work? Do you know what I mean? Because that's the magic, really, isn't it? You only see the 30 minutes of edited footage of what they want to show in reality.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, you know, people, until they look into it more, you see a TV show and you only see one or two people. You know, it looks like a very small thing, and you don't realize just how many people are stood around that you don't see, that are there stood staring at that person that's talking at the camera. But you just have that intimate relationship with that person that's looking at you. You just have that they are emotionally involving you in what's going on, and you're like, wow, it must be amazing to be that person, you know, to be on TV and to be able to say what you want and to be so famous and all that. But what you don't realize is that guy's probably just stood in a tiny little room, and only probably the area that he stood in looks really shit hot. The rest of it is probably just like a dusty old hangar or warehouse. And there's ton of people just stood there staring at him, flicking through bits of paper, shaking their heads, bumping into each other, having a cup of coffee. Do you know what I mean? And it looks really glamorous, but it so is not. So is not.
I bet that sort of does that put you off things now, because you know full well what happens behind the scenes and you're watching programs.
To a certain extent, yeah. But it makes me admire the people who are on TV even more, because they manage to do that professional job and hold the audience and be entertaining or informative, despite all that stuff going around them. And I understand it. You know, I mean, I did in 2001. I did QVC for a year after I left TV in '98, and I went back in 2001 to do QVC because they kept asking me, and I was getting married, so I needed to make some money to pay for the wedding because weddings are stupidly expensive. But I did that, and that's an amazing. That's the most eye-opening of all, I think, because on QVC they all look like they're in houses, and then you go and you film there. And you're walking down huge, like warehousey halls, and there's just all these little sets that are the houses, and like even the windows aren't real, you know. But when you watch it on telly, it all looks real, and you just walk in and out of these little sets, and suddenly you're in a whole different world. I mean, that was funny, yeah. So it makes me respect the people that do the work, definitely.
What were you selling on QVC? Was it technology?
Yeah. TV stuff, video stuff, DVD at the time was getting big, and musical equipment and that kind of thing, and computer stuff from time to time. It was mainly because when I left TV in '98 and I left the games industry completely in '99, I went into the movie industry, and I owned DVD Monthly magazine, and I edited that for 7 years. So the QVC thing largely came off the back of the movie magazine. So
it is true what they say. A lot of it is about networking through things you do that leads on to other possibilities going forward.
Always. People will say to you over and over again, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And it really is.
Yeah.
It really is. It's all just about the breaks. It's all about just, and you can know somebody for years and years and years, not get a break out of them, but you can catch them just on one special day when they just happen to be particularly looking or thinking about something on that day, and you just drop the right words into a conversation, and bang, all of a sudden you're in, and you're moving down the line. And it really is just about it's just about opportunity and the right person, right time.
Yeah, definitely. When you worked on Gamesworld, did you ever meet Dave Williams?
Dave Williams, I think I've sort of like met him briefly here and there, just in passing. Never actually sat down and had a conversation with him. No, not at all.
A lot of people don't realise probably that's one of his first gigs, and he used to make me howl. Leslie was so funny, and Big Boy Barry. That was honestly my favourite part of Gamesworld. I used to enjoy the challenges
I was
as
at the
well.
front end of it one day going in to do some recording, and there was a tall, dark-haired guy in there, and I think it was David Williams, and he said, "I love what you do on the show. I've watched some Gamesmaster and that. I think you're really good. Stick with it," because he was only young and new at the time, so he would have been quite happy to say that to me, because I wouldn't have been one of the small people to him at the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I believe that was David Williams, and we had that conversation. But going back now, I'm not sure if it was or wasn't. But yeah, at the time we thought nothing of it. Do you know what I mean? He was just a funny guy. He was full of character, full of charisma more than he was funny. Do you know what I mean? Because quite actually, it was quite, as you get with those kind of comedians at that time, as we'd had years and years before with the young ones and things like that, sometimes those kind of comedians, you're not sure if they're funny or just really annoying, because they're so
Alan Partridge.
Yes. And then later on you appreciate what they were doing. And I think that that was such a coup. And it shows whoever brought him into the mix and got him on the show. What a great find that was, because Matt Lucas was on there from time to time as well.
Yeah, and obviously the teenagers' favourite games mistress, or Diane Newdale from the Gladiators.
Well, Diane Newdale, I'm sure that the original games mistress on the show was actually I'm trying to remember her name now. Jane, somebody, Jonathan Ross's wife.
Was it? I never knew that.
Jane somebody or other. I can't remember her name now. But she was the original games mistress, I think, because she had been a video games writer. I think that's how she started off with her writing, and then she went to be the games mistress. And then I don't think she stuck with it for more than half a season or whatever, or a season. And then Diane Newdale came in, and of course I think she vamped it up a lot more. Of course, from Gladiators, I think a lot of boys had already mentally undressed her before. So.
It's interesting because that I don't think that would be allowed on television. That kind of human, especially on a child's program, if you like, kids program.
Nothing's allowed on television anymore. The whole like that. The whole lads mag era. Was a wonderful, wonderful era, and I feel sorry to a degree, for a lot of these models and a lot of these attractive young ladies, who, want to pursue that route. They want to be famous for being pretty. They want to model. They want to be in the magazines. They want to do the TV shows. They want to wear bikinis at boxing matches, and they're being bullied into not doing this stuff now by the SJWs and out of this world and the whole woke generation and everything. And I just think I think it's a shame. The world is becoming so beige,
Sterile. It's becoming sterile. No thought.
What they're good at. Men are not going to stop fancying hot-looking women because you're not putting them on the telly anymore. It's not going to change anything. It's thousands of years of genetics, But I don't. It just seems a shame to me. And Diane Newdale in her latex. Maybe that wouldn't happen. Maybe that wouldn't happen anymore. We had her on Gamesmaster season 3, I think, at one point. She was on.
Oh, as the gladiator, I gather, or as the
No, she came on as the games mistress.
Did she really? So there was crossover then.
Bit of cross pollination between the TV shows. Yeah, ooh, I remember walking into the green room and I didn't realise that had been put aside for her to change. I think she was pretty much naked, and there was just talcum powder everywhere. I remember walking in and going, "What the fuck is this?" And it was kind of like, "Whoa, wait a minute! What the hell?" And there's Danielle, and she was basically trying to get into. I think when she got into the latex, I think she covered herself in talcum powder to put the latex on more easily.
Yeah, so she could actually move because she was like this otherwise.
Quite a good moment. I think it took me a good few seconds to leave the room.
Yeah, because of the talcum powder, obviously you couldn't see where you were going.
Obviously, no. Yeah, no, it was boring.
So, just going back to Gamesmaster, Obviously, there was a big thing with the Mario Gate that's been talked about a million times before.
Possibly the greatest moment of video games television of
Ever.
all time. It is the moment, isn't it? That's the big one. There's never been a bigger moment than that.
It's a famous saying, though, that no press is bad press, because it's
Yeah.
kept you in that mindset of people for a long, long time.
Well, this is something that I've said to people and about it all, you know, because obviously it's one of those things that gets discussed a lot. Yeah, I've been trolled for about 25 years as a result of this. You know, people talk about trolling football players and that now. I can't join a conversation about video games online without somebody bringing it up within 4 or 5 comments, you know, bang, 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 or asking about Mario, bang, bang, bang. Here's a link to the Mario on YouTube, bang, bang. Yeah, it's constant. It is absolutely constant. And of course, it gets shown on TV all the time on bad TV programs. And it's hilarious because they show it and they always mention me by name. They don't mention anybody else on the screen. You know, not the presenter or anybody. It's always me that gets named. But what they actually did was they actually gave me gaming immortality on that day because
cemented in history.
Because of the way I behaved, and because people say, you know, oh well, you know, it's because you behave so badly, you know, you're going to cry and all that. And I wasn't going to cry. I was a grown man. I wasn't going to cry. But what I was immensely frustrated, and I was just really angry, and I wanted to get off the stage, but they wouldn't let me use the car home until they finished filming, because and I had my girlfriend with me at the time. It was the Christmas thing. We were supposed to have a wrap party afterwards. It was going to be a nice day out that turned immensely sour.
Yeah,
I think everyone just likes to think that Dave Perry had a hissy fit because he lost, but I lost hundreds of times. You know, when you play video games, you get used to losing. Of course, you lose. You know, you lose. You don't mind, but you don't mind losing fairly.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Did you ever find out what his beef was? Because obviously in seasons 1 and 2, he sort of set his stall out with Gamesmaster and he became associated with it. Then in series 3, I forgot the guy's name, came in.
Dexter
Fletcher, yeah, sorry. And I did feel a bit sorry for him because it had gone from like a dry humour and he was very bouncy and in your face, and it didn't quite fit for me. But then obviously Dominic came back. Do you think that made him think, you see, you haven't got a show without me, so give him a bit more ego boost, if you like?
I think it gave him some power because I think what people don't realize with Dexter, what people have to understand is when we did Gamesmaster, we had a 5-man team. There was myself, Steve Carsey, we were the games experts, and then there was a guy called Chris Kelly, and then there was Adam Wood, who was the producer, and Cameron McAllister, who's the director. And that team largely, apart from me, because I left after season 1, did season 2 as well. So you had this set team that knew how to work. They knew the humor. Dominic had been their discovery as a presenter, so they knew how to make, you know, to get the most out of the situation. Season 3, the director and the producer both went on to new things. So you had a brand new director and producer on season 3 who hadn't worked together before. So they had issues, and they will open. There's a book coming out by a guy called Jack Templeton soon about the history of Gamesmaster, and he's spoken to the 2 guys in there, I think, and I think they've openly admitted that they had issues and clashes, and a lot of those clashes were happening through the headphones. You could hear them happening. Now Dexter had never been a presenter before. Dexter was an actor, so he was doing his first presenting gig on a TV show with a presenter and a director that for a lot of times were pulling in different directions. So he was getting torn apart. So he may have been overcompensating a little bit with it shouting and he's giving it all this because he was just trying to drive things along. Yeah. And then, of course, it was being set in the prison in Oxford, but the prison got recommissioned halfway through the season. So we all got kicked out of there. So then you had a new director, a new producer, who were already at loggerheads a little. Now they had to come up with something completely new, find a whole new venue for shooting, and you had a presenter who was still finding his teeth as a presenter. So then the whole thing moved to London Dungeons and got turned into a game challenge, at which point they came to me and brought me in and said, will you come and just co-present the whole second half of the season with Dexter? we're going to make it a challenge, very much like you do on Gamesworld. So will you come and bring that stability? So I did that. I asked them for a co-presenter's credit, but they didn't give me. But yeah, that was so that was what happened. So he got a bum rap over that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That I don't think I watched him on Press Gang, and he was really good. So I always felt a bit sorry for him because he was sort of put into a bit like a fish out of water, really.
Well, out of everyone, he's the biggest star now, isn't he? You know,
yeah, exactly.
He's the guy that's gone on and got Hollywood at his fingertips. So I mean, you know, who's the fool there?
Well, exactly. Well, the last bit on Gamesmaster, obviously, there's talk about it coming back on E4. Now, I don't know how I feel about that because there'll be two sets of people in reality, won't there? There'll be the new people who've never seen it who'll probably think it's really good with youngsters, modern games, etc. And then there'll be the old school like me who remembers the original, and like with most things that are remade, there's always that it's not quite as good as it was.
I'm not fussed. I think it has to evolve because maybe in its old guise it couldn't survive anymore. You know, it needs fresh people with fresh ideas. You have to try and keep the slightly anarchic, groundbreaking angle to it if you can. Possibly look back to season 1 more than the later seasons. The later seasons I thought got very formulaic and a bit staid in the end. You know what I mean? Whereas season 1, where it looked really raw, where you had the cameras were in shot and you had the lasers and everything. Yeah. It was so wonderfully cheesy and raw. It looked great. It looked like a bunch of game enthusiasts had put it together rather than a professional studio. You know, it looked great. Yeah. And look back to that a little bit more. But I think Gamesmaster now, it's just a brand name now. And however they use it, I just think let them use it. I'm not that precious over it. You know, it's they're on about making it a big celebrity thing. I think brilliant. Yeah. Why not take it down that route? Why try and take it back to what's been done before? Let's go down that route. Let's go down the celebrity route. Yeah, we're in 2021, you know, and that's what people do now. It's all reality celebrity bollocks on the telly now. As long as you don't have a bunch of C-list stand-up comedians as a panel, then it'll be fine, you know, because I'm sick of those shows. Stick some really interesting celebrities up there, get them playing video games. What I would do if it was my show, what would I do? I would, for continuity's purpose, I would ask Dominic Diamond to be the games master. I think that'd be a nice transition from Patrick Moore to Dominic Diamond, because I think that'd be almost like a Doctor Who type passing of the torch. Dominic lives in Canada at the moment, I think, so he could easily film that over there and send it over, you know, and the effects could be put on over here. So that'd be easy to do. Find a presenter, you know, have a presenter do it all, and then get myself to co-present and do the running games commentary on the show. And then get a bunch of presenters in, and it'll be fine. Because then with myself and Dominic, you've got that kind of reach out to the past. Then you're kind of connecting with people who remember it. But then you have a new presenter and you have all new celebrities on it and everything, and so you still have that angle. And I'm sure that Dominic would put a really nice style of his own on the Games Master. You know, you wouldn't want. You can't have a games master that just does another Patrick Moore, because Patrick Moore was a very unique person, and Dominic would be this very edgy sort of crotchy games master that's seen it all before, because he has seen it all before. He did it the first time around. That's what I would do with it, I think, and then whatever, let it go down the celebrity route. I'm up for that, as long as we have real celebrities.
Yeah, I say that all the time when I'm watching the programs with my wife and my daughter. I'm saying, who's that? I don't even know who that is. It's so and so off YouTube. I'm like, who?
It's got to the stage now where you watch these shows and the celebrities don't know who the celebrities are.
No,
they have to introduce themselves to each other. Hello, I'm so and so. Oh yes, oh yeah, from such. You know, how are you a celebrity if you have to introduce yourself to somebody?
Yeah.
That's the opposite of being a celebrity. You know, if people don't recognize you, then you're not a celebrity.
Yeah, you're an unknown.
You're an unknown. It just was very cheap when they were doing the bookings.
It's a shame you never got to meet, because I know you meant, was it George Best you wanted to be on as a guest on?
Yeah.
I think the game he was talking about was Manchester United in Europe, because that's Chrysalis.
It was Chrysalis, wasn't it? Yeah. I always forget Chrysalis or not. Yeah, we did it. That was good fun, because I spoke to Chrysalis at the time and the developers, And I came up with two teams, an all-time Liverpool team and an all-time Man United team. Well, I thought was the best Liverpool team of all time, but I thought was the best Man United team of all time. And they programmed them in, and we were going to have them playing each other. And Emlyn Hughes was up for it. He eventually came on the season, and George was going to come in and play the Man United team. But Jane was a little bit concerned. Jane Hewland, who owned Hewland International, just because George Best, he had the reputation he had of, just not being super reliable. So she didn't want to book him and then maybe have him up or whatever. Yeah. So that was a shame because he was a huge icon to me. And then a few years later, I was at a FIFA thing, I think, at Sports Cafe in London, and they had a lot of football stars there. Who were just hired to be there and have drinks with us and talk to us about old days and stuff. And I was at the bar with Terry Venables, and a friend of mine said, "Look over there's George Best sat over there." George Best was sat there, and he had a group of people around him, and I didn't want to be one of those people. I thought I'll wait till that's died down, and I'll take him over a Guinness or something and say hi. I'm a big fan, blah blah blah. Just wanted to buy you a drink. And leave it at that. I just wanted that one moment with George Best, and when I turned around again, he'd gone. He'd obviously had nothing left the room, and so I got to be in the same room as George Best, but I never got to speak to George Best.
Close but no cigar.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched a documentary on him again the other night, and I'm a big fan. I mean, very unique human being.
Are you? Do you support Manchester United, or do you support football?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Huge Man United fan, yeah.
So I gather you didn't buy their other game at John Barnes International Football.
No,
No,
not really. Not a big John Barnes fan.
It's interesting as well. I was watching the interviews that you had before, and you was talking about your magazine past. And you actually touched upon one of the things that what I always wondered about, and that was about the Christmas edition of a magazine. So you'd have 12 issues, and then after December, you'd have the Christmas edition. And I always wondered why that was the case. And I think you touched on, did they do 13 magazines a year?
Because most publishers, not most publishers, I can't talk for all publishers, but a lot of publishers, especially certainly publishers that I worked for, wanted to do 13 issues a year because, like I said, it's all about revenue. Okay, that's 13 sets of sales and 13 sets of advertising revenue. Okay, because you pay not per month, you pay per issue. Yeah. But then out of the magazine teams, you only pay them 12 times a year because they get paid monthly. So you basically get an issue of the magazine without having to pay any of the costs of producing the magazine except for printing. So it's kind of a free magazine for publishing companies. Yeah. That's pretty much why 13th issue.
I always wondered, because I say you'd go into the shops, you think, it's going to be January, isn't it? We're like the Christmas edition, so that answers that. So I suppose the last question really is around you now into doing. You've got your own tattoo studio. You do tattoos. So has that artistic side of thing always been in the background of everything you've done, and you finally come back round to that, if you like?
I was born able to draw better than most people, and as a child I always carried a carrier bag full of pens and pencils and pads around with me everywhere. I think when I was 4 or 5 years old, I won a competition for up to 14 years old at Butlins and things like that. I was always winning drawing competitions and that. I was an exceptional young artist, and so it was something I always went along and did. And then after I got O-level art and A-level art, and then I did diploma in design and photography. Then I went to the Bath Academy of Art. So I always had art. I was always painting, drawing, sketching, and photography. And then, but I was very good at English as well. So writing, it's easier to make money out of writing than it is out of drawing. So that's why I went to the magazine side of it. But at the time, being able to draw and write, it was a double whammy, because like I've said, it was very hands-on, the production of things. So so that was always there, and it got suppressed really because writing came into it, and then video gaming came into it, and TV came into it, and all that. And I went down that route and got seduced and involved in all of that. And then around 96 happened with the Mario incident, and that pissed off Gamesmaster for me. And then 98 happened with the reboot of Gamesworld, Gamesworld Season 4. And it was terrible. Terrible. Not a patch on the previous seasons. Possibly down to a lot of the production team from Gamesmaster now working on it, which didn't help, in my opinion. So I walked off that. Halfway through, I asked to be left out of my contract. I was about to become a father. And so I wanted to spend more time at home. I didn't want to be away filming all the time. And then in 99, the company I've been working for went into liquidation. So, and at that point, I just had enough of the video games. I'm done now. It's just, everything was just getting on top. And so I went and did my own magazines so I could be in charge of my own life, because up till then I was always reliant on working for other people. So I took control of my own life with my own publishing company. And then in 2007, I could see how the internet was affecting print. Print was becoming more and more of a struggle. W.H. Smiths and people like that were demanding more and more money to put magazines on their shelves. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to what I know. I'm going to go back to what is instinctively me. And that is art. And so I'd learned to tattoo years back when I was in London, just tentatively, before the TV stuff hit. And I went back to that and fine-tuned my skills, and I went back to art, and I've done it ever since. I'm, back in control of my life, and tattooing is a very interesting, very varied job. I have my own shop now back in my hometown where my family all live. So yeah, it was just a matter of everything coming around full circle. And then a few years ago, people started asking me to get involved in the retro gaming industry again. So I started doing the occasional YouTube thing. And that's really
it's interesting, like you say, it's gone in the full circle. Obviously, when you're doing the tattooing, do you ever get nervous that you might cough and suddenly, oops? Because I suppose it's something cannot be undone, isn't it? In reality, it can be built into something.
It's the most extreme form of art there is, without question, because there's no eraser. In almost every other work of art, maybe sculpturing to a degree, but obviously that's not generally on anything that's living. There's no eraser. So if you make a mistake, the person you've made the mistake for is actually sat right there next to you. Do you know what I mean? So there's no hiding. So yeah, it's pretty extreme, but I enjoy it. The other thing I wanted was I'd become very comfortable in the 90s with my audience, if you like, or being at arm's length. I would write things, but I'd never have to see the effect of it, because I'd never see the people that read the magazines, except for when I did exhibitions or whatever. I did TV shows, but I'd make comments, but it'd be to a camera. You'd never see how the audience reacted, really. So I was always pretty far removed from my customer base, whereas with tattooing, I'm right up front, right up close with them. So it's it was a complete turnaround for me. But one I just felt I had to change something at the time.
Well, that's good. It's good that you found something that you enjoy and you can use and do. I think it's always difficult to find something that you enjoy doing and you can do it as a job. So it's good. If
you enjoy what you do as a job, you never work a day in your life. And I've been very lucky in that I've managed to largely shape my life up to this point around people paying me to do things that I would almost do for free. Reviewing video games, making TV shows, tattooing. I get paid to do those things, and probably all of those things I would do as a pastime anyway.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. You look back at your life and you just think everything you've done is amazing, from going to Australia right up to doing your own business and stuff. So it's really good.
I've always maintained that you should, if you don't enjoy something, then stop. You should always you have to mold your own life. You have to make things happen for yourself. Secret of life. One of the secrets of life for me is always work out what the other person wants. And work out how to give it to them. You might not be able to give it them directly, but you can give it find a way of giving it to them indirectly. And if you can work out what other people want, you can get what you want out of them, always. And so there's always a way to make things happen for you. And I've always engineered my life so that would happen. The only time it got chaotic and that didn't happen for me was when I had a child. You know, when my daughter came along. Babies are the ultimate chaos pill. You know, there is no control there. You know, that was when everything spiraled out of control for me. But you know, but even that's exciting. You know, sometimes it's nice to be out of control a little bit.
Yeah, talking of babies, when my daughter was born, my missus got an heart complaint from pregnancy that we didn't know about, and she had to stay in hospital. And they literally said, "There you go, there's your daughter. You can take her home now." And I'm like, I've never held a baby. Do you mind looked after one? So I know exactly what you mean about chaos.
It's scary, isn't it? I remember when we took our daughter home, we sat her on a chair in the front room, like in her baby basket. And we sat her on a chair, and we sat on the stairs, and we just looked at her, and we just went, "What do we do now?"
Yeah, where's the instruction manual?
Yeah, there's no book, is there? There's no book, but you just do know. You instinctively know what to do, and you just find. And of course, unless you've been very unfortunate, you've got parents who are there who can help you along the way. They've been through it all before. But generally, you know what to do, and if you don't, then you find out what to do, because everything you do shapes them. They're like little sponges. They don't you know. It's only when they get older that you realize how much of what you did when they were little has molded them into what they start, like you were saying about becoming like your parents. They're the same, you know. They suddenly start reacting to certain situations, you know, be it good or bad, in the same way that you react. You go, "Oh God, I wish they didn't react like that." And you go, "Oh shit, that's how I react." Yeah.
It's at that point you wish you'd not been so sarcastic, because they've just been exactly the same back at you, and you can't argue because they are you.
And you can't give them any shit for it because you did that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Dave. Thank you so much for taking the time out to come on. Really enjoyed it. And all the best for the future. I hope that when all this craziness has gone, you can open up your tattoo
Next time on A Retro Ramble.
Worst Teams meeting ever. Got conference call in 10 minutes. Starting to think Dave set this up on purpose. Am I live on YouTube? Just sitting around, just thinking about how bad things are at the minute. No one to talk to. Just doing a video conference call with myself. Need a haircut. Barbers are shut. All by myself. Don't wanna be.
I would just like to say a big thank you to all the special guests who took the time out of their busy schedules to appear on Retro Ramble. It is really much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of A Retro Ramble with. All links to the special guest channel can be found in the description below this video. If you enjoyed watching, then please like and subscribe and click the bell notification icon to be informed of when the next episode is uploaded.